Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moments. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Throne of Steel episode number 182 based on novel. So let's start. Moon Goddess is the patriarch of the Night Elves clan, and her dark nature was deeply rooted. Eastern's king turned away from Long Houchen, but his perception was still there, and he knew what Long Houchen was doing. After all, Ting was the spirit of the elements. In a sense, it was just the existence of the soul form. Even if her soul was solid, it would still be just a soul. Long Houchen was trying to find a body for Ting, and it seemed that the Moon Goddess' soulless body was the most suitable candidate. Element elves and real elves were much easier to mix than other races, but only if the attributes were the same, and not exclusive to each other. Eastern's king was the master of the domain of life, and he knew exactly what Long Houchen wanted to do. But he didn't think Long Houchen would succeed. Long Houchen thought for a moment and said, "Perhaps there's another way." As he spoke, he raised his right hand and slowly imprinted it on Moon Goddess's towering and strong left breast. Eastern's king was shocked by Long Houchen's behavior and said, "My friend, don't let your heart full of lights be misled." He was afraid that Long Houchen became fascinated by Moon Goddess' beauty. If he did, his power of light would no longer be pure. Long Houchen shook his head gently, and the next moment, his hand on the bosom of Moon Goddess rose into a faint red light. A drop of blood appeared simultaneously on his 5 fingers. Then slowly seeped through the skin of the Moon Goddess. Eastern's king, unable to take his eyes away from the carcass of Moon Goddess, suddenly turned around and glared at Long Houchen. "Is it worth it? Even if you succeed, you will become much weaker. Elements will always follow you, even if they don't have a body." Long Houchen gently shook his head. Ting is not only an element elf but also my partner. I never thought of her as a maid. She is my friend. This might be her last opportunity. Ting has done so much for me. Why does it matter if I hurt my spirit a little? Long Houchen once did the same thing when he changed Haoyu's attribute with his blood to save Haoyu's life on the Holy Mountain. If one wanted to remove the darkness in the blood of Moon Goddess, then one could only use the power of blood to wash it. Long Houchen wanted to replace the darkness of Moon Goddess with his blood and create the most perfect body for Ting with pure blood of the God of Light. In the middle of the air, Ting's body was trembling slightly, and her mood was fluctuating violently. However, her integration is not yet completed, and she was in the control of Long Houchen's domain of light. She couldn't move at all and could only helplessly watch the drops of blood in Long Houchen's hands being injected into the body of the Moon Goddess. Ting was overflowing with joy that her tears kept falling from her eyes, grateful for the choice he made. She suddenly felt that her feelings had become rich and colorful, as if she were already a life rather than an element, while she looked at Long Houchen. As she slowly closed her eyes, her light grew brighter. Long Houchen made sure that Ting understood the higher heart of light with her actions, and her soul began to evolve together with the element body. Long Houchen was no longer the same old Long Houchen. Years ago, in order to save the life of Haoyu, he lost too much blood. If not for Haoyu's timely blood refeeding, he might have died a long time ago. But now was different. He possessed Light God's constitution, the purest of all in the land of devils and the land of Eastern. When his first drop of Light God's blood dropped onto Moon Goddess' body, the darkness in the blood of Moon Goddess caused a huge wave. If the soul of Moon Goddess was still there, she could still have control over her power to force rejection and create difficulties for Long Houchen. But now that she had lost her soul, the dark forces could only produce a small chaotic struggle. Drop by drop of the blood from the God of Light flowed into the body of the Moon Goddess. The not-so-pure darkness met with the purest light. Black was gradually replaced by gold. It could be seen that layers of black mist were spreading out from the Moon Goddess. Her skin became more translucent and golden light started to glow. Eastern's king had a look of respect in his eyes, the first time he had ever felt such an emotion for a human being. He had all the elves under his rule, and even the good elves could not match the quality of this man. He flew slowly behind Long Houchen and put his hands on his waistcoat, and suddenly, a bright blue light shone on Long Houchen's chest. Faintly visible, on Eastern's king's chest, was a shimmering green leaf. It was one of the 7 leaf of Eternal at the top of the Tree of Eternity and the source of Eastern's king's power. He was harnessing his primordial life force and the infinite life force of the Tree of Eternity to help Long Houchen. With the support of Eastern's king, Long Houchen's heart of eternity beat at least twice as fast. In this rapid pulse, the movement of the blood became more powerful. With the support of great vitality, his sense of frailty was suddenly swept away, and there was a more tremendous breath of life in his blood, which made it easier to cleanse the darkness inside the moon goddess. Eventually, the last trace of darkness was cleared out from the moon goddess body, her whole body became radiant with holiness, and there was a faint light flowed under her white skin. It was as perfect as a sculpture. It was then that the convergence of Ting's power was finally completed. Strong white pillars of light rose into the sky, connected to the top and the bottom of the cave. Under the holy light, 3 pairs of wings behind Ting turned into 4 pairs. At the same time, there was an inch of golden light on her forehead. Her breath was so soft with indescribable holiness and sharpness. Her former excited eyes became calmer and silently stared at Long Houchen, just like a child watching her father. There was reverence, there was love, and there were countless positive emotions. Long Houchen smiled. Ting, this body should accommodate your soul. Come on, as long as the fusion is successful, you'll become a real elf. With a slight nod, Ting flew to Long Houchen. My lord, no matter what Ting becomes, you will always be my master. Long Houchen patted her head and said, silly girl, don't say that. If it wasn't for me, you wouldn't have your soul nearly broken. I'm more than happy to help you reshape your body. I always treat you like a sister. In the future, you will be my sister, and if you wish to, you may follow my surname and call me brother for the rest of your life. Ting's red lips quivered slightly, and she flung herself into Long Houchen's arms. The blood of Long Houchen that flew inside her body was about to merge. When she's in that body, she will become Long Houchen's sister. Long Houchen gently stroked her back. Don't cry. Today's a happy day. Ting suddenly raised her head and threw her arms around Long Houchen's neck and stared at him with her teary eyes. Master, before you become my brother, she suddenly kissed Long Houchen's lips as fast as a lightning. She did it incredibly fast, and it was all too sudden. Long Houchen, who still had to maintain the physical condition of the moon goddess, was suddenly kissed by her. At that time, Ting was still an element. Her lips were very cold, but her emotion was indescribable. Long Houchen was in a daze, while Eastern's king behind him looked a little strange. The elf's kiss was one of the most precious things in their life. The elf was a very faithful race. They would only have one lover their entire life, and even the king of elves was no exception. An elf kissing their loved one showed their loyalty to their lover, a lifelong respect without regret. While Ting was still an elf, Eastern's king realized right away that she was the king of elves with the golden line of light on her forehead, even more powerful than the moon goddess. Long Houchen accepted her as his sister, but she had given him all her love. Does this guy know about the elf clan's custom? Ting's kiss was brief. She then gently looked up at Long Houchen. Master, if there is an afterlife, I will not be your sister. I want to be your lover. Then her body suddenly flashed and merged with the dark breath of the moon goddess. Ting's kiss and her words filled Long Houchen's heart with a shock even greater than that of the previous battle with Eastern's king. Though he did not know the meaning of an elf's kiss, he felt Ting's feelings for him. However, he couldn't accept this kind of feeling because he had feelings for that blind girl from the green bamboo pole from a long time ago. The moon goddess began to emit a strong golden light and the soul and body began to fully integrate. It was not only that Ting integrated into the body of the moon goddess, but also her pure light attribute and her powerful element body. After the previous integration, Ting had been upgraded to level 9. It was quite easy to merge with the moon goddess's body that had been baptized by Long Houchen. However, Long Houchen's blood flowed in her body, and it was impossible to have any romantic entanglement with him. Before, when she was still bodiless, she had no idea how much she longed for the day when she could become a true elf instead of just a pure element elf. However, when she finally had the body, her heart was full of reluctance. Ting had been following Long Houchen for a long time. When she started to follow Long Houchen, she already knew the relationship between Long Houchen and Kia. Due to the fact that she knew Long Houchen very well, she realized that it was completely impossible to have Long Houchen love her, even if she had a body. In that case, the next best thing is to be his sister. This way, I can live and die together with him. Moon Goddess's body slowly levitated, and a pair of pale golden transparent wings slowly stretched out behind her, which meant that the integration of Ting and her body went extremely well. 1 pair. 2 pairs. 3 pairs. 4 pairs. By the time the wings reached 4 pairs, Long Houchen had a faint smile on his face. This meant that after the fusion, Ting did not get weakened. Suddenly, the fifth pair of wings appeared. They were different from the other 4 pairs of wings. This fifth pair of wings was light blue, rather than pale gold. She made it. Long Houchen clenched his fist with excitement. Although he removed the dark attribute inside the moon goddess body, he retained from removing the water attribute. Water and light are both the source of life, and they were compatible. Together with the blood of the light god, Long Houchen could make Ting's body even more perfect. But in terms of blood, she might be a little behind Long Houchen, but with double attributes she should still be able to use the power of life creation. The 6th pair of wings immediately followed the 5th pair of wings. All 6 pairs, 12 wings, stretched slowly behind Ting. 8 of them were golden and 4 were blue. It looked stunning. The spiritual power of Ting fluctuated alarmingly, and gradually a colorful glow came out. This was similar to the effect of the domain of light after the evolution of Long Houchen. But all these colors appeared very differently. 3 colors were the most eye-catching, and the other 4 colors gradually faded. It seemed to be swallowed up by the other 3 colors. Those 3 striking colors were gold, blue, and green. The 3 colors' glow hovered around Ting's body. The most powerful color was gold, which completely dyed the original black hair of the moon goddess to gold. The blue color formed into a long skirt, and the green became the color of Ting's eyes. At this moment, the breath emitted by Ting even surpasses that of Long Houchen, and the 3-color light constituted the fluctuation of the domain, which had already surpassed that of Eastern's king. Eastern's king came over to Long Houchen's side and bowed a little to Ting. "Welcome, Queen of Light Elves." Ting nodded slightly to Eastern's king, then her eyes turned into watery green with full vitality. She looked at Long Houchen with a gentle look. She held her hands in front of her chest and made several gestures. A streak of light floated out, flew towards Long Houchen. Long Houchen was a little stunned. He did not quite understand what Ting was going to do. But he trusted that Ting would never harm him, therefore he received that streak of light. Light lines instantly melted into his body and disappeared. Then Long Houchen's body shook violently along with Ting's body. A golden bridge quickly appeared between them, connecting them from chest to chest. Long Houchen only felt that his spiritual power was rising at an alarming rate. Originally his Heart of Eternity's power was roughly around 90,000, but after the breakthrough into level 9 of rank 3, it went up to 300,000. All he felt was a series of orifices opening up and down his spine. In a short time, his inner strength increased by as much as 50,000 and reached 350,000 at last. But there was no joy on his face, only a hint of helplessness. Ting, why do you do this? Ting, no. Now she should be called Long Ting. Having inherited Moon Goddess Cease's beauty, she smiled at Long Houchen and said, "My brother gave me my body and life. If one day, you are gone, then there is no point of me living in this world. Besides, the contract is done and cannot be changed." It turned out that the seemingly simple rune was the blood deed of Ting. She had Long Houchen's blood in her body. After completing the blood contract on her own, she fed it back to Long Houchen. With a stronger yogi than Long Houchen, she simply covered up the smell of blood deed so that Long Houchen couldn't notice. After the blood contract was completed, Long Houchen was influenced by the contract and his crafts improved greatly, just like what happened between him and Hao Yu. 12 wings spread as Ting stepped over to Long Houchen's side and wrapped her arms around his left arm. "Connected by blood, now my brother will never leave me," she said with a smile. Long Houchen caressed her head resignedly. "What a silly girl you are." Eastern's king looked at Long Houchen and then at Ting. With a smile on his face, he mumbled, "This might be the best possible ending." At that moment, time stopped again, and Long Houchen startled a little as he heard an emotionless voice inside his heart. "You didn't get lost when given the chance of gaining much more profits. You tried to find out the truth when confused. You washed away darkness with light and shaped it with both light and water. You passed the first test. The admiration and kindness from Eastern's king was the greatest thing you learned from this ordeal." The first thought that came to Long Houchen's mind was that this is supposed to be a reminder of the throne of God of eternal and creativity. The instructions here cannot be necessarily be carried out and could even be misleading. If I do not see through the plot of the moon goddess, or if I follow the instructions, I might fail this test. The test for the God of Eternal and Creativity's throne was not only about strength, but also the assessment of human nature, wisdom, and other aspects. But if this is only the first test, what will be the test after this? At the same time, a loud scream of dragons suddenly rang up inside the cave. Long Houchen was taken aback. Eastern's king's face immediately became twisted. Still not over yet? The sacred dragon, riding on the horse of the creator, has come to harass my Eastern again. As he spoke, Eastern's king stepped out and headed outside the cave. Long Houchen knew that the arrival of the sacred dragon was closely related to his next assessment. Without any delay, he flew outside along with Ting. After coming out of the cave, they both looked up to the sky unconsciously because the original blue sky had changed color. The sky was filled with sacred smell, dignified and oppressive, and the world of Eastern also changed its color as reflected by the glow. Eastern's king, suspended in midair, was staring fixedly into the distance as a point of light came hurtling toward him. Long Houchen had excellent eyesight, but before he could look further, the previous bright spot became magnified in his vision. It was a dragon, a truly gigantic one, with no wings on its back, a slender body more than 30 meters long, covered with golden scales, 5 claws on its belly, and double horns on its head. The majestic eyes gazed towards their side, and with its rapid approach, all the colorful lights in the air rose and fell. Eastern's king shouted angrily, "Sacred dragon, are you finished? If you don't have any business here, then just turn around and go back. Are you that bored?" The sacred dragon grunted, "Shorty, are you not afraid of your followers changing their faith? Go to my dragon island if you can. I didn't come for you today. It's God's will. Human, to overcome me is your second test." Eastern's king was just about to say something, but suddenly, a dark green light in the sky fell and shone on him. All of a sudden, Eastern's king's clever spirit shivered and didn't say what was on his lips. He could only give an apologetic shake of the head to Long Houchen. It was a pure force of nature, full of endless vitality. The only thing Eastern's king could do was to believe in the power of the Lord of Nature. The test for the God of Eternal and Creativity's throne would not be less difficult due to his friendship with Eastern's king. Unbeknownst to Long Houchen, his second test was supposed to hold on in a battle against the sacred dragon for half an hour. But because he had just resurrected Ting, the degree of difficulty increased subsequently. Since it was a test, it was inevitable and useless to argue further. Long Houchen gave the sacred dragon a nod and said, "All right." As he spoke, he flashed away into a golden light, and as he rose, the domain of the God of Light expanded, as if to meet the sacred dragon that covered the whole sky. At the same time, a rainbow of light shone as Long Houchen flew, and as he rose thousands of meters into the sky, by a holy unicorn appeared under him. Although the battle had not yet begun, Long Houchen had a sense of the sacred dragon's strength. It was the most powerful monster he knew, and the one that even Eastern's king could not do anything about. The training of the sacred dragon was probably equivalent to at least above level 9 of rank 5. What was more terrifying was that its physical power was equivalent to its spiritual power. The only thing that Long Houchen felt he had a chance to win over was to use his domain, where all creatures of divine nature are primarily light. His domain of light was the source of all light properties, enough to subdue the sacred dragon in this respect. So, he was going to try and see what would happen when his domain come into contact with the sacred dragon's domain. When the two domains came into contact in the air, a strange feeling suddenly occurred in the heart of Eastern's king who was watching the battle from afar. Long Houchen's domain of light crashed into the sacred dragon like a hot iron on a chunk of butter. The sky was also full of colorful light. But the sacred domain lacked the gold deposits of the light domain. Instead of suppressing Long Houchen, it was occupied by Long Houchen in the corner of the sky. Ye! What a pure power of light! No wonder you are entitled to fight with me. The sacred dragon looked at Long Houchen curiously, but it didn't stop. It went straight to Long Houchen, exhaling a colorful breath. Long Houchen with a calm look rode on the holy unicorn, then there was a faint smile on his face. He lifted his right hand and the colorful golden light from his light domain suddenly blossomed like a tsunami, dispelled the sacred dragon and stroked on his breath rapidly. The sacred dragon's breath quickly became weakened, but once the golden color of the sacred dragon disappeared, the rest of the sacred dragon's light rushed toward Long Houchen. Before Long Houchen could make a move, Ting was standing in front of Long Houchen, with her 12 wings spreading out and her right hand pointing out. In the middle of the sky, a huge lightsaber with a length of 100 meters appeared out of thin air. The light of the lightsaber was just a flash, and the breath of the sacred dragon was cut open. At the same time, around Ting's body, there was also a layer of power that belonged to the domain, which was also the attribute of light. But unlike Long Houchen's domain of the god of light, Ting's light, like the midday sun, was harsh and sharp. The huge lightsaber, 100 meters long, sparkled in the sky with golden light, full of the spirit of kings, indomitable. Was that her domain's skill? However, wasn't it too easy for Ting to already apply her skills in the domain? No preparation at all. But, on that golden giant sword, it was her domain's aura. The sacred dragon was also shocked. As the recipient, he felt the breath on the huge sword most strongly. The Sword of Kings was not fancy but was full of indescribable destruction power. He dared not to be careless. The huge body swung in the air, and the two corners of its head shot out a bolt of 7-color lightning. The two beams of lightning merged into one and hit the golden sword. In the intense uproar, the golden sword stopped in the air for a moment. Ting grunted coldly, and her hands quickly turned a few complex gestures near her chest. With one more push, suddenly, the great sword of the golden light abruptly went right for the 7-color electric light and went right to the sacred dragon. This is a domain weapon? Eastern's king stared at Ting from a distance. He was frightened by Ting's strength. Domain weapon? That was the first time Long Houchen had ever heard of it. However, by the look of the current situation, he could also vaguely guess that Ting's domain may be a special form, which used the domain as a weapon directly, but not domain's ability. That sword must be her domain's weapon. It was likely that this particular evolution took place because she combined the full energy of both Excalibur swords during her recovery. Long Houchen felt that Ting's spiritual power was not much inferior to that of Eastern's king. Like Eastern's king, she was almost as strong as those at the level 9 of rank 4, while the sacred dragon was likely to be a level 9 of rank 5. The reason why Eastern's king was supposed to level 9 of rank 5 was that Long Houchen saw him suddenly turn into 7 colors. He shook his body and quickly avoided the golden sword. At the same time, his tail hit the ridge of the sword so hard that the golden sword flew to one side. Ting's body shook slightly, and the huge golden sword in the air became momentarily sluggish. She just had a body. Although the repair had evolved to the level of the king of the elves, she still hadn't mastered the skill of her body yet. Long Houchen pointed to Ting with his right hand. All of a sudden, the colorful golden light rushed to Ting like 100 rivers running to the sea. There was a blood bond between him and Ting, along with the strength from the same source. When his domain enveloped Ting suddenly became full of momentum, with both hands circling and waving in the air. The golden giant sword blossomed into 1,000 lines of light and turned into a curtain of swords in the air, forcing the sacred dragon that about to rush over to stay low. The sacred dragon felt depressed. Although Ting's domain weapons were very powerful in a normal state, it was sure to win this battle over after some time. But Long Houchen's domain was too strong for his. After the primary light attribute completely weakened, the sacred dragon's power had been reduced by at least a third. Although his body was tough, he dared not to run directly to Ting's domain weapons. Therefore, the dragon was suppressed in the downwind momentarily. What worried the sacred dragon the most was that Ting's offense became increasingly aggressive, as well as her mastery of the golden sword and the growth of Long Houchen's domain. The sacred dragon had no choice but to continually use his domain's power. Long Houchen took back his right hand, which pointed to the sky. He had already thought of a way to deal with Sacred Dragon, but he didn't expect Ting's power to be this strong to compete with the Sacred Dragon. That being the case, the hidden triumph cards were in no hurry to be revealed. Who knows if there's a more difficult test for God of Eternal and Creativity's throne awaits. The God of Light's domain fully assisted the domain of Ting, and the Holy Unicorn's head was constantly emitting colorful rings of light to enhance the spiritual power of Long Houchen. The Eastern world was a world full of vitality, the light essential, and the element of light here was very pure. The sacred dragon came here many times because he liked the light element. But at the moment, these elements of light recognized only one master, and that was the domain of light god. The repression in the domain had prevented the sacred dragon from fully exerting its power. Long Houchen and Ting combining their power together, there was nothing that could stand against them. While competing against the golden sword, the eyes of the sacred dragon started to solidify, and the deep incantation sound rang up. His voice was very special, which belonged to the language of the dragon family. Along with his chanting, the 6 colors light except for the golden color on its body became more vivid. Compared with the pure light of the Holy Unicorn, the sacred dragon had 6 properties: water, fire, earth, wind, thunder, lightning, and ice. With light, there were 7 attributes gathering together. At this time, he couldn't mobilize the power of the light, but he had 6 other attributes that he could mobilize. With the continuous chanting of Sacred Dragon, the sky seemed to be boiling. A large number of six-color sparks floated in the air. Dragon language is magic. Long Houchen's face hardened. The sacred dragon language's magic was the most powerful attack in Dragon Clan. In the land of sacred demons, even the common dragon was rare, let alone the sacred dragon. The attack would be terrifying even with one element missing. Long Houchen's right hand rose up again instinctively. "Brother, let me do it. I can do it." Ting's voice sounded unwavering in the ear of Long Houchen. Then, all of a sudden, her body turned into a flash of light and flew towards her golden sword. Ting's domain was called the Sword of Kings, which was a pure domain weapon. Domain weapons existed above ordinary artifacts. The most powerful domain weapons could even surpass the power of the supernatural. What was she trying to do? Ting soon answered the question. She turned into a flash of light and her body quietly disappeared on the Sword of Kings. Golden light, 100 times stronger than before, burst forth. A frightening sword seemed to pierce the sky. The magic of the sacred dragon was also completed by this time. In the sky, the shadow of 6 dragons with a body length of more than 1,000 meters emerged, and each dragon spewed out a powerful breath, heading for Long Houchen. Each dragon's breath was as good as a super curse. 6 dragons' lights and shadows launched at the same time. Suddenly the colors of heaven and earth changed, along with the sun and the moon that seemed to have lost their lights. However, amid this terrifying pressure, the Sword of Kings of Ting suddenly bloated, and in a blink of an eye it turned into a kilometer-long sword. The intention, the soul, and the heart of the sword became one in an instant. It was an indescribable force of terror, with a sharpness that Long Houchen had never seen before. If the purple and golden moonlight sword that Hou Yu changed to be was the most powerful sword of destruction, then at this moment, Ting's Sword of Kings was the most powerful and grandest. Long Houchen used the aria of the Goddess of Light and the Blue Rain and Hibiscus of Light as weapons for a long time, and it was only fair to say that he had always used these 2 swords to embody any insight he had about swords. When the 2 swords were integrated with Ting, all the memories that were attached to the swords infused into her mind. Plus, due to the bond of blood she shared with Long Houchen, her understanding of the swords was much more comprehensive than that of anyone else. It was because she once served as sword spirit. Thousands of golden lights shone in the sky, as if in an instant in the sky appeared numerous golden light. The 6 terrifying breath were stirred by this golden light and suddenly became a chaos. Meteor shower of swords? This is a meteor shower of swords. Long Houchen's eyes widened. That's right, the Sword of Kings was put to use with the knight skill of meteor shower of swords. But it was also the strongest meteor shower of swords Long Houchen had ever seen. In front of the Sword of Kings, the huge bodies of the 6 dragons turned into lambs for slaughter. The golden light shone, and Ting's Sword of Kings made a circle in the air. All of a sudden, on the neck of each dragon, a golden thread appeared. The next moment, they all collapsed completely. The sacred dragon was dumbstruck. Even though his dragon language's magic was not in its best condition as Giant Dragon of Lights was not here, but it was one of his strongest magic, but only to be destroyed by an inferior opponent. The domain weapons were so powerful. She was clearly below level 9 of rank 5, but why was her domain capable of domain to be me? In the view of the sacred dragon, the fusion of Ting and the Sword of Kings was obviously the characteristics of domain to be me. But the fact was Ting not capable of exerting her power for domain to be me. She turned herself into the spirit of the Sword of Kings, thus to urge the Sword of Kings to burst into its strongest power. It can be said that now her ability was 100 times, 1,000 times enlarged. After the Sword of Kings broke the magic of the sacred dragon, she immediately turned her sword and went after the sacred dragon without any delay. The sacred dragon became a bit worried, not to mention his sullen heart. Long Houchen's domain had too much influence, and Ting's domain weapon was so overbearing that even Long Houchen didn't help her. It was because he already felt that he could no longer hold himself together. With a roar, the sacred dragon flashed and appeared thousands of meters away. Stop now. I did not lose. It's just that both of your domain restrained me too much. Besides, it's an unfair fight with 2 against 1. When the golden light converged, Ting went back and stood beside Long Houchen. She glanced at the sacred dragon with a disdainful look and said, "I've only used half of my power. You can't even stand it. You didn't say you couldn't fight against 2. A loser is a loser. As a sacred dragon, you don't even have the courage to admit the fact." If Long Houchen had said this, the sacred dragon would have been very unconvinced. But from the mouth of Ting, he could not refute it. Eastern's king fanned the flames and said, "I never thought that the sacred dragon would be defeated by an elf. How humiliating. I hope we'll never see you again in Eastern." The sacred dragon then said, "Shorty, don't be so shameless. Does this elf belong to Eastern? Don't flatter yourself. Well, I lost. You passed the second test. You can outdo me in domain attributes." Long Houchen nodded to the sacred dragon and said, "Thank you." The test for the god of eternal and creativity's throne was much more difficult than he had imagined, and it was not the same as what Yang Haoyu had told him. In Yang Haoyu's description, the test would not be so difficult. It might seem like that Long Houchen passed the test easily, but in fact, if he did not have the domain of the light god and not have completed his evolution. With his wisdom, experiences, and the perfectly timed resurrection of the powerful Ting, Long Houchen passed both tests easily. It could be said that he passed these two tests because he had wisdom, strength, and luck. Of course, it could also be due to providence. The sacred dragon glanced at Long Houchen and said, "Just because you passed my test doesn't mean you will pass the final test. Your domain attributes will no longer have any advantage in the last test. I suggest that you recover your strength as soon as possible, for the final test is about to begin." Upon hearing this, Long Houchen's heart was filled with both joy and sorrow. However, he did not hesitate to urge his heart of eternity to speed up the rhythm and at the same time to converge the domain, with the wings spread to the maximum. With the help of the Holy Unicorn, he and Ting worked hard to restore the spiritual power. What worried him was the examination that even Sacred Dragon found very difficult to overcome. What pleased him was that the test had finally about to come to an end. If he could pass this last test, it meant that he would get the throne of God of Eternal and Creativity. With Long Houchen and the Sacred Dragon reclaiming their respective territories, the sky became clear again. But in this clear and bright sky, there was a hidden trace of awkwardness. Long Houchen just felt as if he was being stared at, and there was no hint of the voices that had appeared several times before. But the pressure in the air was getting stronger. He did not know what the final test was, but after the fight with the Sacred Dragon, Long Houchen vaguely understood that the most difficult test of God of Eternal and Creativity's throne was not the test of the latter's strength, but the first test of human nature and wisdom. It was important to find the right path, especially if one had been misled. Many strong players who had been tested in the past might fail due to their carelessness. Yang Haoyu told him that he failed the test at least 2 times without even knowing why. After several attempts, Yang Haoyu finally realized that the key to finding out the truth lay in the details. Never ignore any details in the test. The experience he offered Long Houchen was a bit of a generalization, but it was a reminder that he got him through 2 tests in a row. The final test seemed to be about the strength. Only he had no idea how powerful this opponent shall be. While Long Houchen was thinking, a white column of light fell straight down in midair. It was not very big but seemed to be about 10 meters in diameter. It appeared 50 meters away from Long Houchen. The clean white color did not any breath or movements. After about 3 seconds, the light slowly dissipated, and a figure appeared in the air. Eastern's king screamed from not so far away, "Eternal's angel." It was a woman, tall and slender, with overall similarities to Ting in form. She was also very beautiful. It was a kind of noble and superior beauty, but she seemed to be born with arrogance and it gave people a feeling of nothing but normality. She also had the same 12 pairs of wings, just like as Ting. The difference was that Ting's wings were transparent and her wings were more similar to the human spirit wings, but looked more real. The 12 wings were white and immaculate, shining under the sun with a faint and shiny sheen. She looked so noble and holy and no one dared to offend her. The same white dress hung down, plain, but it seemed to fit her perfectly, not too much or too little. Golden hair, golden eyes, but no reflecting of lights. She was holding a long white magic wand in her right hand. There were no gemstones on the wand, but just by a look, it immediately caught Long Houchen's eyes. Instead of a magic wand, it seemed like he was seeing the sun, moon, and stars. That kind of magnificent feeling that was far beyond Yang Haoyu's domain of God of Starry Sky. His heart sank a little, but Long Houchen knew that the woman who was called the Eternal's angel was more terrifying than he thought. Eternal's angel gave Long Houchen a faint look, and her voice was as cold and proud as her appearance. "Defeat me, and you will pass the test." As she spoke, she held her wand high and murmured, "Lord, lend me your power." The sky, all of a sudden, became white haze, and the endless force of oppression was on Long Houchen. Though he was very close to the Eternal Angel, Long Houchen looked at her as if he felt an endless gulf between him and her. The domain of light god subconsciously released out, but the 7 colors of golden light appeared just for a short moment and was immediately covered by the white drizzle rays of light retrieved and shrank. Long Houchen was horrified to find that his domain of light god, which had no certain target, was gradually dissipated under the white light. Although the speed of dissipation was not fast, it was indeed dissipating. It was like Haoyue's attack of chaotic elements strip. What is the nature of her domain? Or no nature? Long Houchen had a thought and tried to keep his domain of light god outside the body, to feel the intensity of the white light in contact. There's no use beating a dead horse. This is the eternal domain of God of Eternal. How can you contend with the light of eternity when you are in the domain of eternity? The light of eternity is the force of chaos which represses and assimilates all attributes. The eternal angel outlined in air with her magic wand, then light and shadow gradually appeared before her. At that moment, Ting came out, and the golden sword appeared once again and went straight to Eternal Angel. She didn't care who she was up against, as long as that opponent was up against Long Houchen, she would help her brother to destroy it. As the Sword of Kings came out, the misty white light in the sky suddenly turned into white light wrapping around it. Although the Sword of Kings was cutting through the white light constantly, her power was rapidly consumed every second as if it's trapped in mire. Ting was taken aback and she did not even incarnate a spirit into the sword but quickly took back the Sword of Kings. The scene in which Long Houchen dealt with Eastern's king and the sacred dragon reappeared, only this time they stood in completely different positions. Long Houchen was the one who got constrained by the domain. He tried to fight against her by domain, and not before long, his spirit would soon run out. And up until now, he still could not see how powerful Eternal Angel's domain was. "Brother, take me as your sword," Ting said firmly, and then she sprang to her feet, a flash of gold, and an épée appeared in front of Long Houchen. His domain did not match against the opponent's domain, so the only way to break the blockage was by force. Long Houchen had no weapons, so Ting had to turn herself into his weapon. The golden sword was 7 feet long and nearly 1 foot wide. There were 18 edges on the blade which made it look sharp. A piece of sharp edge resided on the overlapping wings that made up the hilt of the sword. From the tip to the hilt, it had a transparent line. Like a long gem, the extreme sharpness of the breath in the line flickered and puffed. This video will end here.